Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Stamperia Sunflower Art mini album tutorial series designed for Scrap and Create. If you are just joining me in the tutorial series, there is a complete supply list video showing you all the products that you will need to make this project. However, you can also click on the links in the description box below for all the products that are available on the Scrap and Create website. So check those links out, purchase those products, and follow along. In the previous tutorial, we completed building all of the interactive elements for our album. So now we're going to begin decorating the inside with our sunflower art papers. I'm going to be starting here on the inside front cover, and then I'll be working on decorating the right side page on both sides in this video. I'm going to start off with my 12 by 12 paper here. So I cut this to 6 1/4 by 7 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to use this later, so I'm going to set this aside for now. Then I've cut this to 4 1/4 inches by 8 inches. From my red plain cardstock, I've cut 2 pieces that measure 2 inches by 8 inches. From this 12 by 12, I've cut 2 pieces. The first one measures 1 7/8 by 8 inches. The second one, 1 1/2 by 8 inches. Next, I have a piece of the plain yellow cardstock. It is cut to 1 1/4 by 4 1/4. I'm going to mark this in the center at the top. And now I will be using my coordinating die to cut my decorative paper. So just like with the previous pieces when we cut the cardstock, we're going to cut the decorative papers using this die and placing it so the edge of the die is at the top of the paper and centering this on the die. Then I'm going to add my washi tape. I'm going to take this to my die cutting machine and cut that. I'm going to remove my belly band. Now I've inked all of the edges of my decorative papers with vintage photo distress ink, just very lightly. I'm going to apply these so that this one is here on the left side, this one is here on the right side. So I'm going to leave a small border of the cardstock showing, so there'll be a uniform border top, bottom, and sides. Same thing here, so you want to make sure that this is placed where it's not going to go in that crease, so that's where that border is important. So I will go ahead and adhere both of these pieces to my page, and then we'll come back and apply the belly band. Next, I'm going to use my ruler to mark the center. So 2 1/4 from the center on both sides and on top and bottom. Then I'm going to take my belly band and apply just a thin line of adhesive at the top and at the bottom. And now I'm going to use those marks to line up my belly band and then make sure that the score line here is lined up with the bottom edge and the top is lined up with the top edge. Next, I'm going to take my paper with the sunflowers and apply it here so that there is a uniform border around it. Once that paper is on, I'm going to go ahead and apply my adhesive, just a thin line down on both sides, and I'm going to make sure that this goes all the way to the top of the die cut to those little pointy edges so that those don't get caught on anything. as we're opening and closing the album and the different pages. Then I'm going to close that and adhere that down. Now I have my yellow piece with the decorative edge that I'm going to place right here on the little pocket or tuck spot. When you place this piece on, you will notice there is obviously a larger section of the cardstock on the top compared to the bottom, and that's okay. I'm lining up this bottom edge with the edge of the yellow paper, and that doesn't cut off the design with those little dots from the first decorative edge that we used. From that card pack, I'm going to place this little card here right inside my pocket. Taking my larger of my two yellow pieces, I'm going to adhere this piece to my spine. Now I'm going to skip over just for a moment and open this side up. The other paper that we cut, I'm going to place here on this spine so those two pieces match. Once this piece is on, I will go ahead and close this again. Then the last thing we're going to do is bring in our large photo mat for underneath here. And I've got this piece that's going to go right here on the front of my photo mat. For now, I'm going to leave the back of my photo mat plain, and I will come back and decorate that if I have enough paper left over once I've finished decorating the rest of the album. I'm going to use my bone folder first to open this up a little bit. It'll make it a little bit easier for this to slide in. There we go. So like I was saying, I'm going to decorate everything else first, and if I have enough paper left over, I will add some of the decorative paper on the back. If not, I'll come back with some solid paper and I'll add some solid paper to the back for the photo mat. So for now, we're going to leave this as is, and this and some of the embellishments will come in the final video when we do the finishing touches. From this 12 by 12 sheet, I first cut this to 7 3/4. Then I cut this bottom off just even with the green border. Then I cut this piece to 4 1/2 by 7 3/4. And this one is 3 3/4 by 7 3/4. So we're going to focus on these two pieces. For the bottom piece, we are going to mark this in the center and use the decorative edge on the top section. So I've got my section marked. Now we're going to do the same thing that we did previously, lining up the top edge of my die with the top edge of my page, and then the center with the center of this first little curve tiny section here, which is where the little cutout was on the very first pieces that we used for the cardstock. I'm going to run this through my machine, then I'm going to take this, line this up here, and cut the other half. For this page, I'm going to lift up this flap and we're going to start here. So the piece that we just cut with the decorative edge, it will go, excuse me, it'll go down here. And again, we're going to line this up just like we did the piece over here, where there's a small border down here at the bottom and then a little bit of a larger border at the top because we want to go below where those dots are in our decorative edge die. So I'm going to adhere this here, and then my other piece is going to go here at the top of the page, just below that score line and the edge of the page. Now that I have my background paper on, I can go ahead and add my adhesive to the sides of this front flap to turn it into a pocket. So I'm just going to run a thin line of adhesive down both sides, making sure that I have the tips of this pocket at the top so that it doesn't get snagged on anything. Then I'm going to close this up and then use my bone folder to burnish this down. Same thing with this smaller little tuck spot. I'm going to take my adhesive just on the sides. I'm going to start in the center here and hold this down and then burnish outward so that this lays flatter. From my red cardstock, I'm going to cut 2 pieces. The first one measures 5 1/4 by 3/4. The second piece measures 5 1/4 by 1 1/4. From the decorative paper that we cut the sunflower field from, this was the bottom border strip. I've cut a strip to 5 1/4 inches. And then I have one piece of my yellow paper that measures 5 1/4 by 6 1/2. Now on this one, I'm going to mark this at the bottom, in the center, and then I'm going to use my die to cut this edge. So again, lining up the top edges with the top of my piece and centering it on my paper, I will run this through my die cutting machine. Now I'm going to take my embossing folder and use it on this paper. So you can skip this step if you don't want to do this, but I'm going to use my embossing folder and I'm going to emboss the entire piece. So I'll have to run this through twice. If you've not done this before, you will just emboss and then move the folder and emboss again. I'm going to start down here at the bottom. And what I like to do when I have a larger piece, I line up these ends so that they're straight, so that the edge is embossed all around. Then I'm going to run this through and then I'll come back and show you how I line this up. So now I have my first part. I'm going to come in here and line this up so I can emboss again. So I'm actually gonna have to run this one through 3 times just based on the way that my lines line up. So I am lining up this one and this one. And when I close this, all of these will be lined up on the back side too. So I'm going to emboss this again, and then I'll do one more to get the top. So now I have my entire piece embossed. I'm going to go ahead and ink my edges, and then we'll place these pieces on the page. Starting with this yellow piece, we're going to place this down here on the front of the flap. Next, I have the belly band for my piece, so I'm going to just place some adhesive on each of these ends. And then I'm going to place my belly band right across where this edge of the pocket is. And for me, that's actually right between these 2 sets of squares on my embossed paper. So I'm just going to line it up with that. I'm not going to measure anything. Next, I'm going to take my larger of the 2 red pieces and place this here on the belly band, and I've got my smaller red piece that's going to go down here on the tuck spot. From my adhesive paper cutouts, I have the little piece with the clothesline. I am going to remove that paper backing and place this piece in the center of my belly band. To place my piece, I'm going to try to center this as much as possible. And it's going to hang down just below because I am centering this clothesline part, the top edge, with the edge of my red paper. Then I'm going to use my bone folder to burnish this down. And the final piece, we have this here. I'm going to place this up here at the top of the page. Now I did make a photo mat to place in here, but I've decided I'm going to use this card instead. So this is what's going to go in here to hold our page closed. So I think that's cute. It's got more of it brings all the colors together with the red and then the sunflowers. So we're going to take the photo mat that we had made for this and we're going to place it here in the pocket. So I'm going to remove this and then we'll come up here and we'll cut a piece for this flap. From the remaining piece that was left over, this was the sky from the sunflower field. I've cut from the back side one piece that is 5 1/4 and it's about 2 3/4 of an inch. It's just the leftover piece. I'm going to take my ruler and mark in the center at the top of this piece. And then I'm going to use my edge die here. I'm going to line everything up with the top edge in the center of the die and die cut this so I can place this on the top of the upper flap. So I'm going to take this to my die cutting machine and I'll be right back. I've taken my die cut piece with my decorative edge and then I've cut 1 inch off of the bottom. Then I've taken a piece of the yellow cardstock and cut this to 3 7/8 by 5 1/4. First, I'm going to adhere my die cut piece here to the top. Then I'm going to place my yellow paper in the center, followed by my 1 inch piece down here at the bottom, and it will be just above that score line. From the 8x8 paper, I cut out the little cut apart card and then I backed it onto a piece of cardstock. And I'm going to place this down here as a decorative element, but I'm going to leave this open so a photo can slide underneath of it. So what I'm going to do is only place my adhesive down here on this bottom portion. And then I'm going to place this down here in this right-hand corner. So now when that photo goes behind it, it'll still be decorative, but it won't get in the way of the photo. And then I've got one of my butterflies. This is the yellow butterfly. This is from the ephemera pack. I'm going to place this yellow butterfly down here. I'm going to close this. I'm going to place this butterfly down here on the red, just off to the side. And then I have the blue butterfly. And I'm going to place my blue butterfly over here on my pocket just to give it a little bit of extra decoration. I left my photo mat that we had cut previously for our closure. I'm just going to place this here in my pocket, just like the large photo mat here. I'm going to come back to this at the end once all the pages are covered. So for now, we'll leave that there and we'll take our card, place it through our belly band and slide it down into the closure to hold this shut. Next, we're going to flip open here and work on this page. From the 8x8 paper, I have cut straight down this strip here, and then I've cut this strip off as well. This is going to go here, so I did cut slightly off the bottom and off the top so that it will fit in here. So this one is just right at the edge of both of these final pieces. Now I'm going to adhere this down to the front of my closure band. And then from my yellow paper, I have cut two pieces. They measure 7/8 by 3 3/4. And then I did use my embossing folder on these pieces. One piece is going to go here and one piece is going to go here on the side of the front flap. Now I'm going to place this right up against the paper on the closure. That way there's a uniform border around it. Once I have this on, I'm going to go ahead and lift that up. I have 2 red and 2 yellow. These squares are 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. The first one, I'm going to place a red one on the second flap. The yellow ones I did run through my embossing folder. On the third flap, I'm going to place the yellow. On the fourth flap, I'm going to place the red. On the fifth flap, I'll place the yellow. From the 12x12 paper, I have cut the circular image here that I'm going to place on this one. Flipping, I've cut this, again from the 12x12 paper, I'm going to place in the center of this first yellow. I have the other circular one that I'm going to place here on the other red flap, and then I've got this one that I'm going to place here on the final flap. Next, I'm going to take one of my basic gray magnets and I'm going to place it here on the end of my closure, and it's about 1/2 inch from the edge. Then I'm going to place a coordinating magnet on top of that one, and I will press this down here to place my magnet in the correct position. From the 12x12 paper, I'm cutting first from the right-hand side. I cut a 7.5 by 7.5 square. And then I cut that into 4 3 3/4 by 3 3/4 squares. Now these are going to go on each of the 4 waterfall flaps on the back side. Then I cut a piece to 6 1/8 by 4 inches. So there's a piece cut off of here. This piece is going to go down here. And I'm going to cut one more piece of the patchwork, but I'm going to cut this one so that there is that border between the two. So I'm going to cut this one to 3 3/4 by 3 3/4, making sure that I have this bottom edge in here so that there is a distinction between this piece and this one. So I decided to actually trim this bottom border off because it has this yellow border strip, so that will give me enough of a distinction there. I'm going to go ahead and adhere all of these papers down, and when I adhere this one, I want to make sure that it is butted up against this pocket here so that you don't see any of that chipboard that was uncovered. So that's why it is cut to that size. So I'll go ahead and adhere all of these pieces down. Next, I have a piece of the red cardstock that measures 1 3/4 by 3 7/8, and I'm going to place this here up against this first waterfall so that there is the uniform border, and it will then cover my magnet. From the 8x8 paper, I have cut this small piece, and I am going to adhere this one first to the center of my band, just slightly below the actual center point because I don't want to go over top of the magnet. Then I have the little hat piece. This is also from the 8x8 paper. I'm going to add my adhesive to the back of this one, and I'm going to place that one down here on this bottom corner, overlapping the piece that we just put on. And then I have the little tiny blue butterfly. This is from the ephemera pack. I'm going to place this one up here on the top, overlapping that top portion. Next, I've cut some strips to go in between my waterfall flaps. I have 2 that are from the yellow, 2 that are from the red. They all measure 3/8 by 3 7/8. So wherever the red is on the front, the yellow is going to go above it. And I'm going to line this up with the edge of this flap here, and it will actually align with the left-hand side. Then where the yellow is on the front of the waterfall, I'm going to place my red piece. Then again with my yellow, and then with my red. Once all of those pieces are on, I'll flip up the final flap. I added this ephemera piece to cardstock and fussy cut around it, and I'm going to place this up here in the top corner. Then I've taken the card, this is from the 8x8 paper, and I'm going to make this a tuck spot. So I'm only going to adhere the top and the right side of this piece to my page. So once I add my adhesive, I will hold it in place until it is adhered there. And then I can slide my card up underneath, and it will be hidden mostly by my flaps, but you will see just a little bit of it peeking out. Let's see. Yep, just a little bit still peeks out when it's as far up as it will go. From the 12x12 paper that we have left over, I cut 2.5 inches off the top. Then I cut this piece to 7.5 inches. Then I trimmed this down to 3 3/4 inches. We're going to flip this over, and on the bottom edge, we need to mark this in the center, and then use the decorative die to cut the bottom edge to line up with the decorative edge on the cardstock. So I'm going to go ahead and center this over my piece, and then I will run this through my die cutting machine. I'm going to pull my card out of my pocket just so that it's easier to decorate. I'm going to place this one right on the front, making sure that it is lined up correctly down here at the bottom, and then we'll work on the inside. So on the inside, I'm going to open up first and place one of my basic gray magnets in the center here. Move it up just a little bit. So it's probably about 3/4 inch from that edge. And then I am going to place this back down in my pocket. Then I will attach a coordinating magnet and place it in the correct position. From this paper here, this is the 12x12, I just cut a piece to 3 3/4. I left it the length it is, and the length is 5 3/4. It is the perfect size for my pocket. I'm going to turn it upside down so that the red border is down here at the bottom, and I'm going to place this here covering my magnet. Then I have a piece that's 2 1/4 by 3 7/8 from the solid red cardstock. I'm gonna take my photo mat out of the pocket once again. This is going to go here, tucking into the pocket slightly and pushed all the way over to the left as far as it'll go so that it's resting up against these waterfall flaps. That way when you open it, you can't really see that background that didn't have the craft cardstock covering the whole surface. So I would adhere these down first, and then we will come back and add some more to our booklet that goes in the pocket. From the 12 by 12 paper, I have cut from the right hand side to 3 3/4. Then I cut the bottom piece just past this butterfly, so this ends up being 2 3/4 of an inch. Then I fussy cut around this so that there is just a little tiny border around the entire top section. Next, I have this piece that's 1 1/4 inches. Then from the top, I cut this piece to 2 1/2 inches. I'm going to move this. We're going to keep these 3 pieces. And then I've cut 2 pieces of the yellow solid paper to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. For this piece that has the rope at the top, I need to mark this in the center. And then I'm going to line up my die with the top edge and centered, and then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. With my photo mat, I'm going to start here at the top. I have the piece that we just die cut. It's going to go up here at the top, and then I'm going to take one of my yellow photo mats and place it here. There will be a slight gap here. Whoop, there we go, that looks better. It had over my dots, so there is still going to be a small gap here, and it'll be just up against the score line here. Then down here, I'm going to place the plain wooden piece up against that score line. I've got my other yellow paper here, and then this one that has been fussy cut, I'm going to place it down here. Now there will be a very tiny space between this paper and the yellow paper, and between the yellow paper and the paper up here. Don't forget that when you are gluing this piece down, you want to leave the top portion that's above that mat open so that the photo will slide underneath of there. Then I've taken this piece from the ephemera assortment. I have backed it onto cardstock and fussy cut. I'm going to place this up here, and I'm only going to adhere this upper portion. It's a pretty good amount of it, probably 2/3. The upper 2/3 of it is going to go up here. And I'm just going to place this in the center. So it's definitely below my magnet. I don't want it to get caught in there, so I don't want to put it too far up. And then again, the photo will slide underneath of there. From the back side of the wooden 12 by 12 paper, I've cut one piece that measures 3 3/4 by 7 3/4. And I'm just going to place this here on the back of my little photo mat. And once the little photo booklet is complete, go ahead and slide it down, and the page is finished. So that's it for the tutorial for today. We are finished with this one. So we've gotten the inside front cover and this full right side page. For the next tutorial, where we will come inside and decorate the top flap. If you are just joining me for the tutorial, all of the products for the Sunflower Art collection that I am using are linked in the description box below to the Scrap and Create website, so don't forget to check those out, purchase your supplies, and join us. See you in the next tutorial.